The bridge of the Dominion's wake was dying. Commander Krathos stood at the center of the command deck, his forearms braced against the tactical console as the ship convulsed around him. Warning klaxons screamed. Emergency lights bathed everything in crimson. Through the view screen, space itself had gone wrong. It wasn't black anymore. It was folding. Geometric patterns twisted through the void like living things. Crystalline threads that shouldn't exist in 3 dimensions stretched between his remaining ships. As Krathos watched the destroyer, Relentless touched one of those threads. The ship bent, not shattered, not exploded, just bent like paper in invisible hands. Then it was gone. No debris, no distress signal, just absence where a warship carrying 800 souls had been. Commander Sensor Officer Lyra's voice cracked. Her scales had lost their sheen, turned dull with terror. The web is tightening. 18 ships just, she didn't finish. 18 green icons on the tactical display blinked to nothing. Krathos felt his chest tighten. 3 months ago, he had commanded 300 ships, the pride of the Zetharan Empire, enough firepower to crack a planet's crust. Now the display showed 34 icons, 34 out of 300, and one of those lost ships had carried his son. His throat clicked a Zetharan sound of grief he hadn't made since his mate died 20 years ago. The communications officer glanced up, then quickly looked away. Everyone on the bridge knew. Everyone had heard the screams over the comm before Davros's destroyer folded into whatever nightmare dimension these humans had created. Krathos closed his eyes. His son's last words echoed in his memory. "Father, I can see it. The web. It's beautiful, and it's..." Then static. Then nothing. When Krathos opened his eyes again, his reflection stared back from the darkened section of the view screen. 62 years old by Zetharan reckoning. 4 decades of military service. 47 systems conquered. 218 battles won. And not one of those victories meant anything now. "Log final entry," he said. His voice came out steady. A commander's voice. "Commander Krathos of the Zetharan Imperial Fleet. We were warned. Ambassador Vasquez warned us. Captain Thorne begged us. We chose not to listen." He paused. Through the view screen, another destroyer touched the web and folded. 33 ships. "I chose not to listen," Krathos continued, "and my arrogance has killed 500,000 of my people. If this message survives, if anyone finds it, know this: when humans draw a line, believe them. They don't bluff." Behind him, Lyra made a soft keening sound. The web was contracting. Krathos looked at his crew. 12 Zetharans, all young, all watching him with eyes that held no accusation. Just acceptance. They had followed him into this. They would follow him to the end. "It has been my honor," he told them, "to serve with you." Lyra straightened in her seat. "And ours to serve with you, Commander." The geometric threads reached the Dominion's wake. Through the view screen, Krathos saw space fold around his ship. The laws of physics bent. The universe turned inside out. He whispered his son's name. And then, the Galactic Council chamber stretched so vast that its far walls disappeared into manufactured twilight. Krathos had been here twice before, once to receive commendation for the conquest of the Vorash cluster, once to negotiate mining rights in the outer spiral. Both times he had stood in the observer's gallery, a minor functionary, allowed to watch the powerful debate the fate of worlds. Today he stood on the main floor, not as a participant, as a witness. The chamber held representatives from 73 species each in their designated pod, floating at heights that denoted status in the cosmic hierarchy. The Zetharan pod hovered at mid-level, not the highest tier reserved for ancient species like the Vortons, but far above the lower positions where young species were kept, where young species like humanity were kept. Krathos's attention fixed on the small figure standing alone at the chamber's center. A human female. Tiny by Zetharan standards, barely reaching his chest if they stood side by side. She wore a simple gray suit, no armor, no ceremonial weapons, nothing to indicate she represented anything more than a backwater species with 12 colonies and delusions of grandeur. Ambassador Alara Vasquez, the briefing document had named her. 45 Earth years, career diplomat, represented a species that had achieved faster than light travel only 80 years ago. 80 years. Krathos had boots older than humanity's space program. Let me understand this correctly, Speaker Seraph Vel said from his pod. The Varian's three-part beak clicked with what translation fields rendered as polite skepticism. Your species wishes to claim exclusive rights to a sphere of space 50 light-years in diameter around your home system. That is correct, Vasquez said. Her voice carried clearly through the chamber. Steady, calm. No hint of nervousness that Kratos would have expected from someone representing such a young species before the most powerful political body in the known galaxy. And you expect all spacefaring species to honor this exclusion zone. We expect all spacefaring species to avoid this region, Vasquez replied. Yes. The chamber erupted. Kratos heard the translation field struggle to process the cacophony. Laughter from dozens of species. Outrage from others. The Manthari delegate made a sound like glass shattering. The Koran representatives' tentacles writhed in what their culture used to express disbelief. Kratos himself felt amusement curl through his chest. 50 light years. The audacity of it. The Zitharan Empire controlled 47 systems spanning nearly 200 light years. The Marlene Collective held 300 worlds. Even the youngest species on the council besides humanity had been traveling the stars for 600 years. And this, child species, thought it could declare a massive exclusion zone and expect the galaxy to comply. Beside him, Fleet Admiral Tarok leaned close. They grow bold in their ignorance. They grow foolish, Kratos corrected quietly. There is a difference. Below, Vasquez waited for the noise to subside. She didn't fidget, didn't look away, just stood there with her hands clasped behind her back while the council expressed its opinion of humanity's declaration. Finally, Seraph Vel raised one wing arm for silence. Ambassador Vasquez, the speaker said carefully, your species controls 12 colonies. 12. What possible justification do you have for such a demand? We are not demanding, Vasquez said. We are informing. There is a difference. A new voice cut through the chamber, deep, resonant, the kind of authority that came from conquest. Informing or threatening? Kratos straightened. He recognized that voice. High Commander Velreth of the Talaxian Confederacy leaned forward in his pod. The Talaxians were larger than Zitharans, with thick armored hides and 6 arms instead of 4. They had built their empire through military might, and they viewed any challenge to their authority as an invitation to demonstrate superiority. We are not threatening anyone, Vasquez said, turning to face Velreth's pod. We are establishing a boundary. We ask that all species respect it. Ask. Velreth's mandibles spread in what his species used for a smile. You ask nothing. You stand before this council and declare that a massive region of space belongs to your infant civilization and expect us to simply comply. Yes, Vasquez said simply. Velreth laughed. The sound reminded Kratos of tectonic plates grinding together. And if we refuse, the High Commander demanded, will your 12 little colonies wage war against the galaxy? We hope it does not come to that. Hope. Velreth stood to his full height, impressive even through holographic projection. Let me tell you what I think of your hope, human. The Talaxian Confederacy has conquered species with technology far beyond your own. We have shattered fleets 10 times the size of your entire space navy, and you think you can dictate where we may or may not travel. Kratos watched Vasquez's face. Her expression didn't change. No fear, no anger, just that same steady calm. High Commander Velreth, she said, I would strongly advise. Advise nothing, Velreth's roar echoed through the chamber. The traditional trade route between Talaxian space and the Outer Rim passes directly through your so-called exclusion zone. It has been used for 3,000 years. Do you truly believe we will alter our course because a species that still uses fusion drives asks us politely? The route can be adjusted, Vasquez said. It would add perhaps 6 days to the journey. A small inconvenience compared to what? Compared to insulting the Talaxian Confederacy by suggesting we must go around your pitiful territory. Kratos saw it then. The shift in the room. What had been amusing theater was becoming something else. Something dangerous. Velreth's forearms spread wide. No, Ambassador Vasquez, I will not adjust our route. In fact, I believe it is time someone taught your species its proper place in the galactic order. The chamber went silent. Kratos had seen this before. When a Talaxian high commander spoke of teaching lessons, fleets usually followed. He glanced at Admiral Terok. The older Zitharan's expression was thoughtful. "This may work in our favor," Terok murmured. "If Velreth humiliates the humans publicly, it reinforces the hierarchy, shows other young species what happens when they reach above their station." Krathos nodded slowly, but something bothered him. Some detail his tactical mind couldn't quite identify. Vasquez stood motionless in the center of the chamber, while Velreth continued his tirade. Other council members began speaking among themselves. Some seemed troubled by Velreth's declaration. Others appeared satisfied that humanity would soon be reminded of its place. A few looked at Vasquez with something that might have been pity. "Ambassador Vasquez," Seraph Vel said when Velreth finally paused for breath, "the Council cannot control the actions of individual empires. If the Talaxian fleet enters your declared exclusion zone, we will not intervene. However, I must warn you that any hostile action against Talaxian vessels will be considered an act of war." "We understand," Vasquez said. "Do you, A new voice spoke from one of the highest pods. Ambassador Astara of the Vorton Collective leaned forward, her ancient eyes fixed on the human. Krathos knew of her. 800 years old. Had witnessed the rise and fall of empires that existed before the Zitharan species achieved spaceflight. High Commander Velreth is not making an empty threat." Astara continued, her tone almost gentle. "The Talaxian fleet will include at least 200 warships. Your entire navy numbers, what 40 vessels, with inferior shielding and weapons technology." 37 vessels currently operational, Vasquez confirmed. "Then you must see reason," Astara said. "Withdraw your declaration. Apologize to the Talaxians. Perhaps offer trade concessions. It is not too late to avoid catastrophe." Vasquez shook her head slowly. "We will not withdraw the declaration." "Then your people will die," Astara stated flatly. "Child species, I have witnessed civilizations older than yours rise and fall. I have seen what happens when pride outweighs wisdom. The Talaxians will not show mercy." "We are not asking for mercy." "What are you asking for?" Astara demanded. "You must want something. No species makes such declarations without purpose." For the first time since entering the chamber, Vasquez's expression shifted. Something moved behind her eyes. Something that made several of the nearer council members unconsciously draw back. Krathos leaned forward in his seat. His tactical mind finally identified what had been bothering him. Vasquez wasn't afraid, not even slightly. "We want to be left alone," she said quietly. "That is all we have ever wanted." Her voice remained calm, but the words cut through the chamber like a blade. "We spent 10,000 years fighting ourselves, destroying ourselves, nearly ending ourselves a dozen times over. We finally unified. We finally looked up at the stars and decided to join the galaxy peacefully." She paused. The chamber had gone silent again. "And in 80 years, we have been invaded twice, had our trade ships seized 7 times, watched 3 of our colonies demand protection payments from species who see us as easy targets because we are young." Krathos felt something cold settle in his chest. The way she spoke, the control. This wasn't a desperate plea. This was a statement of fact. "We are tired," Vasquez continued. "We are tired of being tested. We are tired of being viewed as prey. We are tired of explaining that we simply want to develop in peace. So we are drawing a line, a clear line, and we are telling the galaxy as politely as we know how not to cross it." "Or what?" Velreth's voice dripped with contempt. "What will you do, human? Your weapons are primitive, your shields are weak, your ships are slow. What possible threat do you pose?" Vasquez turned to face his pod one final time. When she spoke, her voice dropped into something that wasn't quite threatening, just factual. "We told you what we want, High Commander. We told you where our boundaries are. We told you what would happen if you crossed them." She paused. The silence stretched. "If you choose not to listen, that is your decision. But do not say you were not warned." Then Vasquez did something that surprised Krathos. She bowed slightly to Speaker Seraph Vel, turned, and walked toward the chamber exit. Her footsteps echoed in the silence. Every eye followed her. At the door she stopped. Didn't turn around. 3 months, she said. "You'll understand in 3 months." Then she left. The council chamber remained quiet for a long moment after her departure. Kratos watched the door where she'd disappeared. That cold feeling in his chest hadn't faded. Pathetic, Velreth muttered, but his voice lacked its earlier confidence. Seraph Vel cleared his throat. Are there any other matters to— Wait. Ambassador Meros of the Koran Dominion rose from his pod. The Korans were an ancient species, peaceful by nature, known more for philosophy than military might. Kratos had never heard Meros speak during a council session. I must speak, Meros said. Ambassador Meros, Seraph Vel sounded surprised. I have studied the humans, Meros said carefully. It is my hobby, you might say. I have read their history, their literature, their philosophy. I have watched how they behave. And Astara prompted, and I would urge caution. Velreth sounded bored. Why? Meros seemed to struggle with his words. Humans are different. They are a species that spent 90% of their existence at war with themselves. They developed nuclear weapons and pointed them at their own cities. They created diseases that could kill billions and stored them in laboratories. They invented ways to poison their own atmosphere, boil their own oceans, crack their own planet's crust. He paused. The chamber listened, and yet they never quite destroyed themselves. They came close dozens of times, but something always pulled them back from the edge. What is your point? Velreth demanded. My point, High Commander, is that humans are very good at one thing above all others, finding new and efficient ways to kill. They spent millennia perfecting the art, and now that they have finally stopped fighting each other, one must wonder what they have been doing with all that creative energy. Kratos felt the cold in his chest deepen. Building colonies and fusion drives, Velreth scoffed. I am not impressed. Perhaps you should be, Meros said quietly. When a human issues a warning, High Commander, it is because they have already prepared for what comes after the warning is ignored. It is their nature. They do not bluff. Velreth's laughter boomed through the chamber. Then let them prepare. I look forward to seeing what their preparations have accomplished. Perhaps they have built 40 ships instead of 37. Perhaps they have upgraded their shields by 5%. It will not matter. He cut his transmission. His pod went dark. The council session ended shortly after. As delegates began departing, small groups formed discussing the confrontation they had witnessed. Kratos remained in his seat thinking. Commander, Admiral Terok said, we should report to the Emperor. Yes, Kratos said absently, but his mind was elsewhere. When a human issues a warning, it is because they have already prepared. They do not bluff. The Imperial Palace on Zithar Prime made the Galactic Council chamber look modest by comparison. Throne rooms large enough to dock cruisers, halls lined with trophies from conquered worlds, 47 planetary standards hung from the ceiling, each one representing a system that had bent knee to Zitharan might. Kratos walked these halls with Admiral Terok heading toward the Emperor's private council room. Around them, palace guards stood at attention in full ceremonial armor. Servants moved silently, trained to be invisible unless needed. Kratos had been summoned. That alone told him the meeting's importance. The council room doors were carved from a single piece of stone, harvested from the first world the Zitharan Empire had conquered 600 years ago. They swung open silently as Kratos and Terok approached. Emperor Veskarn sat at the head of an obsidian table. 90 years old, 40 of them as emperor. His scales had dulled with age, but his eyes remained sharp. 4 military advisors flanked him, generals who had built their careers on expansion and conquest. Commander Kratos, Veskarn said. His voice still carried authority despite his age. You attended the council session today. Yes, Imperial Majesty. Kratos and Terok both performed the ritual bow. Then you witnessed the human's declaration. I did. Your assessment, Kratos chose his words carefully. The human ambassador was surprisingly composed. She seemed confident in her species' ability to enforce the exclusion zone. Seemed, one of the generals, Vrask interjected. Seeming is not capability. Indeed, Veskarn said. What do we know of human military capacity? Admiral Terok stepped forward. 37 operational warships, Imperial Majesty. Fusion-based propulsion. Conventional kinetic and energy weapons. Shield technology approximately 40% less effective than ours. Their largest vessel masses less than half of a Zitharan destroyer. And they think this is sufficient to enforce a 50-light-year exclusion zone. Vrask laughed. The arrogance is almost admirable. Vesgern tapped one claw on the obsidian table. What concerns me is not their capability, but their timing. Why declare an exclusion zone now? What has changed? Perhaps nothing, Tarok suggested. They may simply be attempting to establish presence. Young species often overreach early in their development. We did the same once. 600 years ago, Vesgarn reminded him, and we had the ships to back our claims. The Emperor turned to Krathos. Commander, you have combat experience against 32 different species. You have conquered 17 systems personally. In your professional opinion, could humanity actually enforce this exclusion zone? Krathos thought about Vasquez's calm, about Meros's warning, about that cold feeling that hadn't left his chest since the council session. Militarily, Imperial Majesty, they cannot. 37 ships cannot patrol a sphere of space that large, cannot defend against multiple entry points, cannot hold territory against a concentrated fleet. But, Vesgarn prompted, hearing the unspoken word, but I would be cautious nonetheless. Ambassador Meros is correct about human psychology. They fought themselves for most of their history. Species that survive constant internal warfare develop creativity in violence. Creativity will not stop a fleet, General Vrask said flatly. No, Krathos agreed. But, the door chimed. A servant entered, bowed. Imperial Majesty, urgent transmission from High Commander Velreth of the Talaxian Confederacy. Vesgarn gestured. A holographic display materialized above the table. Velreth's massive form filled it. Emperor Vesgarn, Velreth said without preamble, I assume you witnessed the humans' declaration today. I did through my representatives. Then you know they have drawn a line through established trade routes. The Talaxian route through their claimed space has been used for 3,000 years. I will not alter it for primitives. Vesgarn's eyes narrowed. What are you proposing, High Commander? I am assembling a fleet, 200 warships. We will traverse the human exclusion zone in 3 months' time. I wanted to inform you personally in case the Zitharan Empire wished to observe. Kratos saw it immediately, the trap. Velreth wasn't asking permission. He was offering an opportunity. If the Talaxians humiliated humanity publicly, it would demonstrate the cost of overreach. Other young species would take note. And if the Zitharan Empire observed without intervening, it would signal approval of Talaxian methods. But if something went wrong, Vesgarn leaned back in his seat. An interesting proposal, High Commander. However, the Zitharan Empire has its own trade routes that pass through the humans' claimed space. Perhaps we should send our own fleet. Velreth's mandibles clicked. A joint operation. No, Vesgarn said slowly. A smile curved his mouth. Separate but simultaneous. You take the northern route, we take the southern. 2 different fleets, 2 different entry points. If the humans wish to enforce their exclusion zone, let them try to stop both of us. Kratos felt his gut tighten. This wasn't strategy. This was pride. The Emperor wanted to ensure the Zitharan Empire had equal credit for putting humanity in its place. An excellent suggestion, Velreth agreed. 3 months then. Let us see if human warnings have teeth. The transmission ended. Vesgarn turned to Krathos. Commander, you will lead the Zitharan fleet. 300 ships, our finest. Make this a demonstration the galaxy will not forget. 300 ships. More than had been assembled in a generation. The Emperor wasn't just making a point. He was making a statement. Imperial Majesty, Kratos began carefully. If I may suggest, you may not, Vesgarn interrupted. His tone allowed no argument. The decision is made. 300 ships. 3 months. You will cross through the human exclusion zone at the coordinates we specify. You will document everything, and you will show the galaxy that the Zitharan Empire does not bow to the demands of children. He stood, indicating the audience was over. Dismiss it, Commander. Begin preparations immediately. Krathos bowed. As he and Tarok left the council room, his mind raced. 300 ships, half the active Imperial fleet. The Emperor was committing massive resources to prove a point. In the hallway outside, Tarok spoke quietly. This is more than a demonstration. I know. If we succeed, the Emperor looks strong. If we fail, we won't fail, Krathos said. But he thought about Vasquez's calm, about Meros's warning. They do not bluff. The assembly yards above Zithar Prime could build 50 warships simultaneously. Over the next 3 months, they would prepare 300 vessels for Kratos' fleet. But tonight, as Kratos stood on the observation deck, watching construction crews work in vacuum, his mind was elsewhere. Father. He turned. Davros stood in the doorway. 25 years old, Kratos' only child. His mate had died giving birth to him, and Kratos had raised the boy alone while building his military career. Davros had his mother's eyes, soft gray instead of Kratos' hard amber. You should be asleep, Kratos said. Officers need rest. So do commanders. Davros stepped onto the observation deck. He wore a junior officer's uniform, pilot division. Kratos had pulled no strings to get him there. Davros had earned his rank through skill. I heard about the Emperor's order, Davros said quietly. Word travels fast. Father, Davros hesitated. Is this wise 300 ships to cross through space that humans claim it seems excessive? Kratos studied his son. Davros had his mother's caution too. She had always questioned his certainties, pushed him to consider alternatives. He missed that. The Emperor has decided, Kratos said. We serve. I know, but do you believe the humans are bluffing truly? Kratos looked out at the construction yards. Sparks flew as welders fused hull plates. Massive engines were being installed in destroyer frames. 300 ships taking shape. I don't know, he admitted. Their ambassadors seemed convinced. But 37 ships cannot stop 300. The mathematics are simple. Unless they have something we haven't seen yet. What could they have? We've monitored their technological development for decades. Fusion drives, conventional weapons, nothing revolutionary. Davros was quiet for a moment. Then, Father, I want to volunteer for the fleet. Kratos turned sharply. Absolutely not. I'm a qualified pilot. I have 48 combat hours. My rating? No, Kratos' voice came out harder than intended. This is a demonstration, not a combat operation. But I will not risk you needlessly. With respect, Father, you're taking 300 ships, thousands of officers and crew. How is my risk any different? Because you're my son, Kratos thought. Because if something goes wrong, I can't bear to lose you too. But he couldn't say that, so instead, because I command this fleet, and I say you stay here. Davros's jaw tightened, mother's stubbornness showing through. Then I formally request transfer to the fleet, through official channels. Denied. I'll file an appeal, which I will deny. They stood in silence facing each other. Father and son, commander and officer. Finally, Davros spoke quietly. You taught me that running from duty dishonors the uniform. That when the Empire calls, we answer. Were those just words? Kratos felt the argument slipping away from him. Davros was right. Every principle Kratos had instilled in him now demanded he be allowed to serve. This is different, Kratos tried. Why, because I'm your son, that should mean I hold myself to a higher standard, not a lower one. Damn him for being right. Damn me for teaching him too well. Kratos sighed. You understand that this is likely just a formality. The humans will see 300 ships and back down. There will be no combat. I understand. And you still want to volunteer? I do. Kratos looked at his son, saw the determination, saw the young officer who had earned his rank, saw the boy who used to sit in his lap while he told stories of the Empire's glory. Destroyer class, Kratos said finally. You'll command a gunnery station. Nothing fancy. You stay in formation and follow orders precisely. Davros's face brightened. Yes, sir. And Kratos caught his son's arm as he turned to leave. When we return from this demonstration, we talk about your future. About whether you want to continue in the military or pursue something else. Agreed. Agreed. Davros smiled his mother's smile. Then he was gone, practically running down the corridor in excitement. Kratos turned back to the observation deck. Watch the ships taking shape. 3 months. In 3 months, they would cross through the human exclusion zone. They would prove that warnings without force were meaningless. They would demonstrate Zitharan superiority, and they would return home with Davros safe. It would be simple, quick, painless. Outside in the construction yards, welders sparked. 300 ships grew from skeletons to warships. And somewhere 50 light years away, humans prepared for visitors. Kratos didn't know it yet, couldn't know it, but in 3 months he would remember this moment, this, dis- this conversation with his son. He would remember it while his fleet died around him, while space folded in ways it shouldn't, while Davros screamed over the comm and then went silent. He would remember and he would understand too late that Ambassador Vasquez had been right about one thing. They had warned him, and he hadn't listened. 3 months passed like a countdown to judgment. The Zatharan Imperial fleet assembled at Rally Point Meridian, 3 light years from the human exclusion zone boundary. Kratos stood on the bridge of the Dominion's wake and watched his tactical display populate with icons, green dots appearing in perfect formation as ships dropped out of hyperspace. 10 ships, 50, 100, 200. Each arrival sent a pulse through the fleet network. Each pulse confirmed another warship ready for the crossing. Battle cruisers massing 600,000 tons. Heavy destroyers bristling with railguns and plasma cannons. Frigates designed for rapid strike operations. Support vessels carrying enough munitions to level a continent. 300 ships, the largest Zatharan fleet assembled in 40 years. Kratos had commanded fleets before, had led the assault on Varash Prime with 80 ships, had broken the siege of Talmark Station with 112, but he had never stood at the center of something this massive, this overwhelming. The display showed perfect spacing between vessels, perfect alignment, the result of 3 months of coordination planning drilling. His officers had worked themselves to exhaustion, ensuring every ship knew its position, its role, its responsibility. Beside Kratos, Admiral Terok studied the formation with satisfaction. Magnificent. The Emperor will be pleased. The Emperor will be pleased if we succeed, Kratos corrected quietly. How can we not? Terok gestured at the display. 300 ships, Commander, against 37 human vessels. This is not combat. This is a parade. Kratos said nothing. He had learned over 3 months not to voice his doubts aloud. The Emperor had made this operation political. Any questioning of its wisdom could be seen as disloyalty. But the doubts remained. He thought about Ambassador Vasquez's calm, about Meros's warning, about the way Vasquez had looked at the council chamber, not with fear, but with certainty. Commander to Communications Officer Nelva said, "Final ship arriving now." On the view screen, the destroyer Crimson Valor dropped out of hyperspace. The icon appeared on Kratos' display, completing the formation. Ship 300 of 300. Kratos knew which station Davros served on that ship. Gunnery 3, port side. His son had sent a brief message this morning. Professional, formal, ending with, "Will make you proud, father." The message sat in Kratos' personal files. He hadn't responded yet. Didn't know what to say. "All ships report ready, Commander," Nelva announced. Kratos activated the fleet-wide channel. 300 bridges would hear his voice now. Thousands of officers and crew. "This is Commander Kratos," he said. His voice carried the weight of 40 years' service. "We stand at the edge of human space. 3 months ago, the species known as humanity declared this region forbidden. They warned the galaxy not to enter. They threatened consequences." He paused, let the silence build. "Today we show them the cost of empty threats. Today we demonstrate that the Zatharan Empire does not bow to demands from children. Today we cross their line." Another pause. "Then all ships prepare for standard formation advance. Speed .7 light speed. Course direct transit through the exclusion zone core. Estimated crossing time 8 days. He looked at Terok. The Admiral nodded approval. "Engage," Kratos ordered. 300 ships began moving as one. The formation was beautiful in its precision. Centuries of naval tradition made manifest in perfect spacing, perfect timing, perfect coordination. The lead elements, heavy cruisers with the best sensors and shields, formed a wedge. Behind them, the main battle group, flanking destroyers on the wings, support vessels in the protected center. A formation designed to respond to any threat from any direction. A formation that assumed the threat would come from ships. Kratos watched the tactical display as the fleet accelerated. The boundary of the human exclusion zone appeared as a dotted line. Just coordinates in space. Nothing physical, nothing real. Yet. "Time to boundary crossing," Kratos asked. 6 hours at current speed, Commander Navigation Officer Theris replied. 6 hours. Time enough to review the mission parameters again. Time enough to run final systems checks. Time enough to wonder if he was leading 300 ships into history or into catastrophe. Kratos pulled up the intelligence reports on human military capacity. He had read them dozens of times over the past 3 months, searching for something he'd missed. 37 operational warships, fusion drives, conventional weapons. Nothing in their known arsenal could threaten even one Zatharan destroyer, much less 300, unless they had developed something new, something invisible to Zatharan intelligence networks. But 3 months wasn't enough time to develop revolutionary technology. 3 years maybe, 3 decades certainly, but 3 months impossible. Kratos closed the reports, tried to quiet the voice in his head that whispered warnings. "Commander," Sensor Officer Lyra said, "detecting energy signatures ahead. Small vessel, single ship." Kratos' attention snapped to the sensor display. "Position directly in our path. Holding position approximately 10,000 kilometers inside the boundary line." A single ship. Waiting. Classification. Lyra's fingers danced across her console. Mass profile suggests research vessel. Human design. Life signs. 5 crew members, sir. 5 people. Kratos felt that cold sensation return to his chest. "What is a research vessel doing here?" Turok demanded. "I think," Kratos said slowly, "it's waiting for us." 4 hours later, the human ship appeared on visual. It was small, painfully small compared to the Dominion's wake. The research vessel looked like something built for scientific surveys, not combat. Unarmed, unarmored. Its hull panels showed wear from years of service. It hung in space like a leaf waiting for a storm. "Hail them," Kratos ordered. Nelva worked her console. "Channel open, Commander." The view screen shifted. A woman appeared. Human. 38 years old by their reckoning, though the lines around her eyes suggested she'd lived harder than her years. She wore a simple jumpsuit with Earth insignia on the shoulder. Behind her, Kratos could see a cramped bridge. 4 other crew members at various stations. The woman's face was calm, tired, as if she had been through this conversation before and knew how it would end. "This is Captain Isadora Thorne of the research vessel Athena," she said. Her voice carried clearly. "You are currently approaching the boundary of Earth's exclusion zone. Turn back now. This is your final warning." Kratos heard officers around the bridge suppress laughter. Turok made a sound of disbelief. "Captain Thorne." Kratos studied her face. Saw no fear there, just resignation. "Captain Thorne," Kratos said carefully, "I am Commander Kratos of the Zatharan Imperial Fleet. I command 300 warships. You command a research vessel with 5 crew members. I suggest you move out of our path." Thorne nodded slowly as if he'd confirmed something she expected. "Commander, I need you to understand something. I'm not here to threaten you. I'm here to save you." "Save us?" Turok laughed openly. "From what? Your overwhelming force." Thorne's eyes never left Kratos. "I helped design the system you're about to enter, Commander. I know exactly what it will do. I've watched the simulations, seen the test results. I'm begging you, turn back. Please." Something in her voice stopped Kratos' immediate response. The way she said, "begging." The way her hands trembled slightly, despite her calm expression. This woman believed what she was saying. "What system?" Kratos asked. "I can't tell you that. Classified. But Commander," she leaned forward slightly, "I have children. 2 daughters, 8 and 11 years old. I said goodbye to them this morning. Do you know why Kratos didn't answer. "Because I volunteered to be here, to give you one final chance to turn around. My crew and I drew straws to see who would speak these last words to you. I won." Her smile was bitter. "Lucky me, Pippen." "Captain Thorne," Kratos said, "I appreciate your conviction, but I have my orders. 300 ships will cross this boundary. If your exclusion zone is defended, we will encounter your defense fleet and discuss terms." "There is no defense fleet," Thorne said quietly. "Then move aside." "I can't do that." "Then you will be destroyed." Thorne closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, they glistened. "My daughters' names are Elena and Sarah. Elena wants to be a doctor. Sarah wants to study music. They wrote me letters before I left." "Do you have children?" Commander Krathos thought of Davros, serving on the Crimson Valor, Gunnery Station 3. That is not relevant, he said. It's the only thing that's relevant. Thorne's voice cracked slightly. I'm a mother saying goodbye to her children to stand here to warn you, because what you're about to do will kill hundreds of thousands of people, your people, and I can't stop it. No one can once you cross that line. All I can do is try one more time to save you. The bridge had gone quiet. Officers stared at the view screen. Move your ship, Captain, Krathos said. His voice came out harder than intended. I can't. Then the responsibility for what happens next is yours. No, Commander. Thorne shook her head. The responsibility is yours. You were warned 3 months ago by Ambassador Vasquez. You were warned again today by me. If you cross that boundary, every death that follows is your choice. Kratos felt anger flash through him. This human, this woman with a research vessel and 5 crew members, lecturing him about responsibility, about consequences. You have 30 seconds to move your ship, he said coldly, or we will move it for you. Thorne looked at something off-screen, said something too quiet for the microphone to catch, then back to Kratos. Then I'm sorry, she said. I'm sorry we couldn't convince you. I'm sorry for what's going to happen. I'm sorry we tried so hard to avoid this and you're forcing us to do it anyway. 20 seconds. My crew and I volunteered for this. We all signed the papers. Our families know. They understand why we're here. Her voice was steady now, professional, the voice of someone who'd accepted their fate. We drew straws to see who would be the last voice you heard, the last person who tried to warn you. 10 seconds. I won, Thorne said. Then quietly, fire. For a moment, Kratos didn't understand. Fire. The Athena was unarmed. Then he realized. She wasn't giving an order to her ship. She was giving him permission. Fire, Kratos ordered. Weapons Officer Crane hesitated, just for a second. Then his training overrode his conscience. A lance of superheated plasma crossed the distance between the Dominion's wake and the Athena in less than a second. Captain Isadora Thorne didn't try to dodge. The Athena didn't move. She simply sat there waiting. The plasma struck the research vessel's hull. The ship didn't explode. Not immediately. For a fraction of a second, Kratos saw the hull buckle, saw atmosphere vent in a glowing cloud, saw the Athena's running lights flicker. Then the fusion reactor went critical. The flash lit up the view screen. When it faded, nothing remained. No debris field, no wreckage, just expanding gas and radiation. 5 people. Gone. The bridge was silent. Kratos stood very still, staring at the empty space where the Athena had been. In his mind, he saw Captain Thorne's face, her tired eyes, her trembling hands. I have children. 2 daughters. Commander Tarek said quietly. Orders. Kratos swallowed. His throat felt dry. Resume course, he said. All ships maintain formation. The fleet moved forward. Behind them, the Athena's death scream faded into background radiation. Ahead, the boundary waited. The dotted line on the tactical display didn't look like anything special. Just coordinates marking where human space began. According to their declaration. According to their warning. According to Captain Isadora Thorne, who had volunteered to die here. Crossing boundary in 10 seconds, Theris announced. Kratos watched the countdown. His 4 hands gripped the command console. Around him, his bridge crew sat tense, waiting. 5 seconds, 4, 3, 2, 1. The Dominion's wake crossed the boundary. Nothing happened. Space looked exactly the same on both sides of the line. Same distant stars, same empty void. The exclusion zone was just like any other region of space. Kratos waited, listened to his own breathing. 4 heartbeats strong in his chest. Still nothing. All ships across the boundary, Commander, Nelva reported. No contacts, no energy signatures. Sensors show empty space in all directions. Tarok exhaled. As expected, the humans were bluffing. But Kratos thought about Captain Thorne's face. The certainty, the resignation. I helped design the system. What system? Where was it? Maintain alert status, Kratos ordered. Full sensor sweeps every 10 minutes. I want to know about anything unusual immediately. Yes, Commander? The fleet continued forward. Perfect formation, perfect discipline. 300 ships moving deeper into the exclusion zone like a spear thrust into empty space. 1 hour passed, then two. Nothing. Kratos found himself relaxing slightly. Perhaps Turok was right. Perhaps the humans had been bluffing. Perhaps Captain Thorne had been a fanatic, believing in defenses that didn't exist. Perhaps Commander Lyra said. Her voice carried a note of confusion. I'm detecting something, not a ship, not a station, just readings. Kratos moved to her console. Define readings. Energy fluctuations. Very faint, distributed across a wide area. It's almost like she adjusted her sensors, like space itself is rippling. Localized gravitational distortion, Turok suggested. Natural phenomena. These regions sometimes have unusual subspace conditions. Maybe, Lyra said, but she didn't sound convinced. Kratos studied the sensor data. The fluctuations were there, subtle, barely detectable, forming a pattern that extended in all directions around the fleet, moving with them. It's matching our speed, Kratos said quietly. Lyra looked up. The fluctuations, they're maintaining constant distance from the fleet. How is that possible with natural phenomena? Lyra's scales paled slightly. I don't know, sir. Send a message to all ships. I want every sensor officer to report if they're detecting similar readings. The responses came back within minutes. Every ship reported the same thing. Energy fluctuations, rippling space, following the fleet like a shadow. Kratos stared at the tactical display. The green icons of his ships, the faint overlays showing the fluctuations surrounding them. What are we inside, he thought. Navigation, he said. Calculate jump coordinates anywhere outside the exclusion zone. I want options. Theros worked his console. His fingers moved quickly at first, then slower, then stopped. Commander, he said carefully, I'm having difficulty with the calculations. What kind of difficulty? Every jump vector I plot, no matter which direction, no matter which destination, the calculations show us arriving deeper inside the exclusion zone. The bridge went silent. That's not possible, Tarek said. Jump physics don't work that way. I know, sir, but the mathematics are consistent. It's as if space itself has warped, creating a gravitational well that pulls everything toward a central point. Kratos felt ice spread through his veins. The center of the exclusion zone. Yes, sir. Could this be a sensor malfunction? Something affecting our instruments? I'll check. Theros bent over his console, ran diagnostics, checked and rechecked. Finally looked up. Sensors are functioning normally, Commander. The readings are real. Kratos made a decision. All ships halt advance. Full stop. Now. The order rippled through the fleet. 300 ships began decelerating, killing their forward momentum. The perfect formation held as they came to relative rest. Plot a reverse course, Kratos ordered. Back the way we came. If we can't jump out, we'll travel out. Theros nodded, started working. Commander, Lyra interrupted. Her voice was higher now, frightened. The fluctuations are increasing. Whatever this field is, it's getting stronger. On the sensor display, the energy patterns intensified, like something was waking up. Contact from the relentless Sir, Nelva said. Destroyer on the outer perimeter. They report system malfunctions. Navigation drift. Comm delays. Power fluctuations. Tell them to run full diagnostics. Already doing so, sir. They say, Nelva paused listening to her earpiece. They say diagnostics show all systems normal, but the malfunctions continue. Kratos' mind raced. Malfunctions that diagnostics couldn't detect. Jump vectors that bent toward the zone center. Energy fluctuations that followed the fleet. This wasn't random. This was designed. Contact the relentless, Kratos ordered. Tell them to. Sir, Nelva's voice cracked. The relentless has gone silent. Define silent. No response to Hale's commander. They're still on sensors, still in formation, but they're not answering. Kratos pulled up the relentless on his tactical display. The green icons showed the ship exactly where it should be. Systems appeared nominal, but no communications. Send 2 destroyers to make visual contact. I want to know what's happening over there. Yes, sir. Dispatching the Iron Fang and the Stormbreaker. On the view screen, Kratos watched two destroyers break formation. Their engines flared as they accelerated toward the Relentless. The distance closed. 5,000 kilometers. 3,000. 1,000. Iron Fang reports visual contact with the Relentless, Nelva said. Ship appears intact. No visible damage. Engine still running. But she stopped. But what? The Iron Fang says the Relentless's bridge windows are dark, no interior lights visible, and they're not responding to laser comm. Direct line of sight. Should be impossible to jam. Tell the Iron Fang to bite. Commander Lyra's shout cut through his words. The Iron Fang and Stormbreaker. They've gone silent, too. Kratos spun to her console. Both of them. Yes, sir, within 30 seconds of each other, same as the Relentless, still on sensors, still in formation, but no response to any communications. 3 ships, 800 crew on the Relentless, 200 on each destroyer, 1,200 people. Silent. Visual on the 3 ships, Kratos ordered. Maximum magnification, and the view screen shifted, showed the Relentless floating in space. Running lights active, engines glowing. But as the Iron Fang had reported, the bridge windows were dark. The camera shifted to the Iron Fang. Same thing. Ship active. Bridge dark. Then the Stormbreaker. Active. Dark. What in the void is happening? Tarek whispered. Kratos opened his mouth to respond. Then space folded. It happened too fast for the eye to follow. The Relentless was there. Then it wasn't. Not destroyed, not exploding. The ship simply ceased to exist. One moment a destroyer massing 400,000 tons. The next empty void. No debris, no energy discharge, no radiation signature. Just absence. What? Tarek started. The Iron Fang folded next. Same impossible geometry. Same instant transition from matter to nothing. Then the Stormbreaker. 3 ships. Gone. The bridge erupted in chaos. Officers shouting, alarms wailing, sensor readings spiking across every spectrum. Silence, Kratos roared. The chaos stopped. Everyone turned to him. Kratos stared at the empty space where 3 ships had been. His tactical display still showed them as green icons for a moment. Then the system updated. The icons blinked to nothing. 1,200 people. Davros served on the Crimson Valor. Outer perimeter, same position as the Relentless. Kratos activated the fleet-wide channel. His voice came out steady, a commander's voice, even though his insides had turned to ice. All ships, this is Commander Kratos. We have encountered an unknown phenomenon. 3 vessels have been affected. Until we understand what we're facing, all ships will maintain current positions. No one moves. No one approaches the affected area. Is that clear? Acknowledgements flooded in. 300 ships, minus 3. 297 voices confirming they understood. Kratos switched to a private channel. Crimson Valor, this is Kratos. Report status. Static. Then, Valor Actual Commander. All systems nominal. No anomalies detected. Is Gunnery Officer Davros on station? A pause. Confirmed, sir. He's here. Would you like to speak with him? Yes, Kratos thought. Let me hear his voice. Let me know he's safe. But he was a commander, not just a father. Negative, Kratos said. Just confirm he's accounted for. Confirmed, sir. Kratos ended the transmission, looked at his tactical display, at the 297 ships that remained, at the empty space where 3 had vanished. Captain Isidore Thorne's voice echoed in his memory. I helped design the system you're about to enter. What system? What had she built? Commander, Lyra said quietly. The energy fluctuations. They're forming a pattern now. I can map it if you want. Do it. Lyra worked her console. A 3-dimensional overlay appeared on the tactical display. The fleet sat in the center. Around them, extending in all directions, threads of energy formed geometric patterns. A web of some kind. A web they were caught inside. What is that? Turok breathed. Kratos didn't answer, because he didn't know. But he was starting to understand that Captain Isidore Thorne had died trying to warn them, and they had crossed the line anyway. Ships vanished in clusters over the next hour. Not the slow, methodical harvesting Kratos had expected. The web accelerated. 6 ships folded simultaneously, then 12, then 18. Each wave came faster than the last, as if the system recognized the fleet's size and adjusted its appetite accordingly. Kratos stood at the command console watching his fleet shrink. 297 ships, 279, 246. Each lost icon represented hundreds of lives. Thousands of crew members who had trusted him to lead them safely. Commander Lyra said, her voice tight. The web is tightening, energy density increasing exponentially. Kratos didn't respond immediately. They couldn't jump out, couldn't navigate free. Every attempt to reverse course resulted in ships disappearing faster. They were trapped. Contact from the Crimson Valor, Nelva announced. Kratos' hearts jumped. Put them through. The view screen shifted. Captain Vrain appeared. Young for a destroyer captain. Competent, but Vrain's face was pale, his scales dulled with stress. Commander, we have a situation. Report. Crew members are disappearing from sealed compartments. Engineering Section 3-4 crew working together, then footage glitches, and only 2 remain. It's happening throughout the ship. Ice flooded Kratos' veins. The web wasn't just taking ships anymore. How many? Kratos demanded. 7 so far. No, make that. Vrain's expression twisted. 12, Commander, they're walking through walls. I'm watching it happen on security feeds. They walk toward bulkheads, and pass through like the walls don't exist. And we can hear them screaming over comms from somewhere else. Valor maintain. The transmission cut to static. Crimson Valor respond, Kratos ordered. Silence. On the tactical display, the Crimson Valor's icon remained green. Systems nominal, still in formation, but silent. Kratos activated the emergency override channel. Gunnery Officer Davros, respond immediately. Static hissed through the speakers. Davros, this is your father. Answer me. More static. Then weak distorted his son's voice. Father Davros, what's your status? Something's wrong. Bridge isn't responding. Half my crew they walk through the bulkhead. Crane and Solace. I watch them and they're screaming. Father Crane says he's somewhere that hurts. He says space is wrong there. He says the transmission dissolved into static. Davros, Kratos' shout echoed across the bridge. His crew stared, having never heard their commander break. He forced himself to breathe, to think like an officer, not a father. All ships, he said into the fleet-wide channel, report crew disappearances. I need numbers. The responses flooded in. Every ship reported the same phenomenon. Crew members vanishing from sealed compartments. The web had reached inside the hulls. While Kratos processed the reports, the ship count dropped to 218. We need to do something, Turok said. We can't just wait to be harvested. Before Kratos could respond, Lyra spoke up. Commander detecting a new contact. Single vessel, human configuration, approaching from Galactic North. Put it on screen. A small ship appeared, not military, more like a courier or observer craft. It maintained distance from the fleet, moving with deliberate caution. Hailing us, sir, Nelva said. Open channel. A human face appeared. Male, 42 years old, gray at the temples. Weathered features suggesting years of service. He wore an Earth Defense uniform. His expression held no triumph, just professional calm underlaid with something that might have been sadness. Commander Kratos, the human said. His voice was steady, practiced. My name is Captain Stellan Greaves, Earth Defense Observation Corps. I'm here to witness. Witness, Kratos' voice came out harsh. The slaughter of my fleet. I'm here to witness the consequences of ignoring our warnings, Greaves corrected gently, and to offer what limited help I can. Turok stepped forward. Help your weapon is killing us, and you speak of help. It's not my weapon, Admiral. I don't control it. I'm an observer. But yes, I will help if you'll listen. Kratos studied the human's face, saw no deception, just weary professionalism. Explain what's happening to my fleet, Kratos demanded. Greaves nodded. Commander, 80 years ago, Earth faced a choice after our second invasion. Build more conventional ships to compete numerically, or build something no conventional fleet could overcome. He gestured off-screen. A holographic display appeared beside his image, showing the geometric web with additions, nodes, connection points, platforms. We chose the latter, 50 autonomous platforms throughout the exclusion zone. Each generates a quantum folding field. The fields overlap, creating the web you've detected. Anything entering without proper clearance gets tagged, then harvested. Ships are folded into pocket dimensions, separate quantum spaces that exist alongside our universe, but can't interact with it. Greaves paused. From your perspective, they simply vanish. From inside, time doesn't exist. The ships and crews are frozen in quantum stasis. Not alive, not dead, preserved. Kratos felt sick. Can you stop it? No, the answer came without hesitation. The platforms are autonomous, designed that way deliberately. Once activated, they run until the zone is clear. No override, that's the point. The defense is absolute. He leaned forward. But Commander, I can offer one option. Not to stop the harvesting, to save some of your people. How? Emergency survival pods. The platforms target vessels, not individual pods. Immediate fleet-wide evacuation, some pods might reach the boundary before being tagged. Some, Kratos repeated. How many? Greaves pulled up projections. Probability curves sloping downward. You're deep in the zone. Most pods won't make it. But based on positioning and evacuation speed, maybe 10%. 10%, 50,000 people, and condemning 450,000. Terok grabbed Kratos' arm. This is a trick. But Kratos looked at Greaves' face, saw the same tired resignation he'd seen in Captain Thorne. These humans hadn't wanted this. They'd tried to prevent it. What happens to those who stay? Kratos asked. Eventually, every ship gets folded. The platforms are patient. Greaves' expression softened. I'm sorry, Commander, truly, but this is what happens when warnings are ignored. Kratos closed his eyes. Behind him, his bridge crew waited. He thought about the Emperor's order, about pride, about Zitharan tradition. He thought about Captain Thorne, about her daughters. He thought about Davros, and he made his choice. All ships, Kratos said into the fleet-wide channel, immediate order, begin emergency evacuation protocols. All crew to survival pods. Launch immediately. Make for the boundary at maximum speed. Silence. Then, Commander, you want us to abandon ship? Yes, I am ordering immediate evacuation. Choose life, that's an order. He cut the channel, looked at his bridge crew. You heard the order. Evacuate. Lyra stood. Commander, what about you? I stay with my ship. Then we stay too. Before Kratos could argue, Nelva spoke up. Pods launching across the fleet. Thousands of them. The view screen showed the evacuation, tiny survival pods jettisoning like seeds from dying plants. Each held 5 to 8 crew members firing emergency thrusters toward the distant boundary. The tactical display updated with thousands of blue dots streaming away. But the web was reacting. Kratos watched in horror as pods touched geometric threads and folded. Not all, maybe 1 in 20, but enough to show most wouldn't make it. Crimson Valor evacuating, Nelva reported. Pod launches confirmed. Davros would be in one of those pods. Track Valor trajectories, Kratos ordered. I want to know which ones clear the boundary. Minutes passed. More pods launched. The fleet dissolved as crew abandoned ships. Ship icons disappeared faster. The evacuation had triggered acceleration in the harvest. 246 ships. 208, 173. Valor pods launching, Nelva said. Then quieter. Sir, there is a problem. What kind? One Valor pod. Emergency beacon shows malfunction. Thrusters not firing. Still attached. No. Which pod? Nelva checked her display. Her scales went pale. Pod 7, gunnery section. Kratos felt the world tilt. Pod 7, where Davros would have evacuated from. Get me a channel to that pod. Trying, sir. Emergency frequency only. It's there. Static. Then his son's voice. Frightened. Young. Father, can you hear me? Davros, what's your status? The pod won't launch. Thrusters are dead. Crane's trying to fix them, but the systems are fried. We're stuck. We can't. The Crimson Valor appeared on the view screen. Kratos watched pods streaming away. Counted them. But one remained attached. Pod 7. Davros, listen. Kratos said, his voice steady somehow. The Valor has manual thruster controls. Can you access them? We're trying, but Father, the ship is vibrating. The hull is making sounds. Like it's bending. The web was tightening around the Valor. Get those thrusters online, Kratos ordered. Now. We're working on it. Crane says the power couplings are. The transmission filled with a sound that would haunt Kratos forever. A tearing, not metal. Something deeper. The sound of space being torn. Father. Davros's scream cut through static. On the view screen, the Crimson Valor began to fold. Kratos watched his son's ship bend in impossible ways. The hull warped, twisted, geometry inverted. Pod 7 still attached. Davros! Kratos lunged forward as if he could reach through space. The Crimson Valor completed its fold and vanished, taking Pod 7, taking Davros. The view screen showed empty space. Other Valor pods still fleeing, but not Pod 7. Kratos stood frozen. His forearms hung limp. His breathing had stopped. Somewhere behind him, someone keened. It took a moment to realize the sound came from his own throat. Commander. Greaves' voice was soft. I'm sorry. Kratos turned slowly to face the human captain. You're sorry, he repeated distantly. My son just died because your weapon doesn't distinguish between ships and pods. And you're sorry. Yes, I watched Captain Thorne die 3 hours ago. She had 2 daughters. I know what it costs. Then stop this override the platforms, please. I can't. It's autonomous. Then you're as much a prisoner of this weapon as we are. Greaves nodded. In a way, yes, we built something absolute. That was the point. But absolute means it can't be controlled. He paused. Your son chose to serve. He knew the risks. That doesn't make his death easier, but it makes it meaningful. Kratos wanted to rage, to scream. But what was the point? How many pods have escaped? He asked. Greaves checked instruments. 42,000 so far. Still counting. Most early launches will make it. 42,000 out of 500,000, but more than zero. Fleet count at 118 ships, Lyra said quietly. 118 from 300. Kratos looked at his bridge crew. They had stayed with him. All of you, Kratos said, get to the escape pods. Now. Sir, Lyra began, that's an order. I lost my son today. I will not lose all of you too. Go. They hesitated, then one by one moved toward the exit. Lyra paused at the door. It has been an honor, Commander. And mine. Now go. Live. Tell them what happened here. She left. Kratos stood alone on the bridge. Just him and the view screen showing Greaves. And the tactical display showing 118 ships. 106, 93. Commander to Greaves said, you should evacuate too. Kratos shook his head. No, I stay with my ship. It's fitting. Your death won't change anything. I know, but it's all I have left to give. 81 ships. Kratos activated the ship's log recorder. His final entry. Commander Kratos of the Zitharan Imperial Fleet. 3 months ago, Ambassador Vasquez warned us. 3 hours ago, Captain Thorne begged us. We chose not to listen. He paused. On the view screen, Greaves watched silently. I chose not to listen. I chose pride over caution. I chose to prove humanity was bluffing rather than accept they might be serious. And my arrogance has killed 450,000 of my people. His voice cracked, including my son, Gunnery Officer Davros. 25 years old, he volunteered. He trusted my judgment, and I led him to his death. 67 ships. If this message survives, know this. When humans draw a line, believe them. When they issue a warning, heed it. They warned us exactly what would happen. And it happened exactly as they said. Kratos looked directly at the recorder. I am Commander Kratos. I conquered 17 systems in 40 years of service. I won 218 battles. I served the Zitharan Empire with honor. He straightened, forearms at his sides. Command posture. And I will die having learned that strength without wisdom is not strength at all. It is just arrogance waiting to be broken. 54 ships. Captain Greaves, will you do something for me? If I can, Commander, tell the galaxy what happened here. Not as propaganda, as warning. Tell them the Zitharan Empire tested Earth's resolve and was found wanting. Tell them to respect boundaries, to listen to warnings, to choose wisdom over pride. Greaves nodded. I will. I'm recording everything. The galaxy will know. Thank you. 47 ships. Krathos walked to the observation port, looked out at his remaining fleet, at the geometric web tightening, at space that folded wrong. He thought about Davros, about his son's last words. Father, can you hear me? Yes, I heard you, and I failed you. Commander Greaves, one more thing. Yes. Tell my people, tell the survivors that choosing life over honor takes courage. Tell them to rebuild, to learn, to be wiser than I was. I will. 38 ships. The Dominion's wake began to vibrate. Krathos felt it through the deck plates. The web was reaching for him. All remaining crew abandoned ship. Final order. Running footsteps in corridors. His crew fleeing. Good. 29 ships. The vibration intensified. Through the observation port, space shimmered. The threads grew visible, geometric patterns that hurt to look at. They wrapped around the Dominion's wake like fingers closing. Krathos thought about his life. 40 years of service, 17 conquests, 218 victories. All meaningless now. His greatest achievement would be this failure. This lesson purchased with 500,000 lives. Captain Greaves, Krathos said, his voice calm now. Thank you for bearing, but that's just... And I'm sorry. For what, Commander? For making you watch this, for forcing you to be part of our tragedy. Greaves's face showed genuine emotion, sadness. We all play our parts, Commander. Yours was to test the boundary, mine is to ensure the lesson is remembered. 18 ships, the hull groaned. Metal that shouldn't bend started bending. Krathos closed his eyes, whispered his son's name one final time. Davros, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. The web contracted, space folded, and Commander Krathos ceased to exist in any dimension that mattered. The observation room went dark. Captain Stellan Greaves sat in silence, staring at the empty view screen. The Dominion's wake had vanished 3 minutes ago. The last Zetheran ship 90 seconds later. 300 ships. Gone. His communications officer spoke quietly. Sir, final count. 48,312 survivors reached the boundary. They're clear. 48,000 out of 500,000, less than 10%. Send them coordinates for the nearest Zetheran station, Greaves ordered. Transmit medical aid protocols. Yes, sir. Greaves pulled up mission logs, added final entries, ship counts, casualty estimates, evacuation numbers. But he also noted other things. Captain Thorne's sacrifice, Commander Krathos's final choice, Davros's malfunction, the crew who stayed with their commander. These weren't just numbers. They were people who had made choices. Sir, the communications officer said, Earth Command wants your full report. No. Tell them it's coming, and tell them... Greaves paused. Tell them we won, but there's no joy in it. He stood, walked to the observation port, looked out at the exclusion zone. It looked normal now, just empty space. But Greaves knew what lay hidden in those quantum pockets, knew that 50 platforms maintained their vigil, knew that 450,000 Zetharans existed somewhere in frozen stasis, knew that Captain Isadora Thorne's daughters would grow up without their mother, knew that families across the Zetharan Empire waited for news that would never be good. Log final entry, Greaves said quietly. I have witnessed the complete destruction of the Zetharan Imperial fleet. 300 ships entered. 0 survived. Estimated crew loss, 451,688 souls. He paused. But I also witnessed Commander Krathos choose mercy over pride. In his final moments, he showed more wisdom than in 40 years of service. Another pause. The exclusion zone functions as designed. The platforms performed flawlessly. The deterrent is absolute. Greaves closed his eyes. And I pray we never have to use it again, because this victory tastes like ashes. He ended the log, but didn't move to leave yet. There was one more thing, one more truth that needed recording, not for Earth Command, for his own conscience. Greaves opened a classified log file, one that wouldn't be transmitted, one that would stay locked in his ship's secure systems. Personal addendum, he said quietly. What I told Commander Krathos was true. The exclusion net cannot be stopped. The 50 platforms will continue their work until the zone is clear. He looked out at the stars. What I didn't tell him, what I couldn't tell him, is that the exclusion net is only phase one. Greaves pulled up a star chart. 300 points of light appeared scattered across the galaxy, each one marking a position far from Earth, far from any human colony. 80 years ago, we didn't just build defensive platforms. We built offensive ones. 300 autonomous strike platforms positioned throughout known space, each equipped with the same quantum folding technology, each capable of targeting any coordinates within 48 hours. He zoomed in on one platform's location. It hung in deep space between two major trade routes. Invisible, undetectable, waiting. They've been there since before we achieved FTL, placed by generation ships, maintained by automated systems. No one knows they exist. Not the Galactic Council, not our allies, not even most of Earth's government. Greaves's reflection stared back at him from the observation port. The exclusion net protects our borders, but if Earth falls, if someone manages to break through our defenses and threaten our home, those 300 platforms activate automatically. They target the aggressor's home systems, their colonies, their infrastructure. He closed the star chart. The platforms disappeared from view, but they were still there, would always be there. But mutual assured destruction, galactic scale. If Earth dies, we take our killers with us, and probably half the major civilizations in the process. Greaves felt the weight of that knowledge, had felt it for years. Commander Krathos thought the exclusion net was terrifying. He never knew about the real nightmare, the one that ensures Earth will never be conquered, because conquest would mean extinction, ours and theirs. He ended the personal log, encrypted it with codes that would die with him. Some truths were too dangerous to share. Set course for Earth, he ordered. Maximum speed. His ship turned, accelerated, left the exclusion zone behind. 6 weeks later, the Galactic Council chamber was filled to capacity for the first time in 3 centuries. Every species, every faction had sent representatives. They sat in their pods in silence waiting. 2 weeks had passed since the Zitharan fleet vanished. 2 weeks of searching. 2 weeks of hoping for survivors. The 48,000 who'd escaped in pods had told the story, but the galaxy needed official confirmation. Speaker Seraph Vel rose from his pod. This emergency session is now convened. The matter before us is the disappearance of the Zitharan Imperial Trade Fleet. Ambassador Vasquez of Earth has agreed to address the council. Lena Vasquez entered through the main doors. Same simple gray suit, same calm expression. She walked alone to the chamber's center. Ambassador Vasquez, Seraph Vel said carefully, the council requests information regarding the Zitharan fleet's fate. Yes, Vasquez said simply. The single word sent a ripple through the chamber. She wasn't denying involvement. Please tell us what happened. Vasquez looked around the chamber, made eye contact with various representatives. The Zitharan fleet entered our exclusion zone despite multiple warnings. They were informed of the boundaries. They were told not to cross. They chose to cross anyway. Our automated defense systems responded as designed. The fleet was eliminated. The chamber erupted, shouts in dozens of languages. Seraph Vel called for order 3 times before the noise subsided. You admit responsibility, he asked. I confirm that our defense systems functioned as intended. 450,000 people. The shout came from Acting Commander Vresh, a Zitharan who'd escaped in the pods. He stood in the Zitharan pod, scales dark with grief and rage. 450,000 of my people, and you stand there calmly admitting it. Vasquez turned to face him. Yes, I'm sorry for your loss, Commander. Truly, but your people were warned. At the council session 3 months ago, at the boundary, even when Captain Thorne attempted one final warning, Commander Krathos chose to ignore it all. The consequences were his responsibility. You murdered them, Vresh roared. We defended our territory, Vasquez corrected. The difference is significant. Ambassador Astara's ancient voice cut through the tension. Ambassador Vasquez explained these defense systems. How did they eliminate 300 warships so completely we found no trace? Vasquez was quiet for a moment. Given the circumstances, Earth's government has authorized limited disclosure. Holographic displays appeared above her, complex equations, 3-dimensional spatial models. During our final global war, we developed theoretical weapons based on manipulating space-time. The research was shelved. When we began exploring the galaxy and faced repeated aggression, we revisited it. 60 years of perfection, 20 years of construction. The result, what we call the exclusion net. She showed the three-dimensional map. 50 points of light. 50 autonomous platforms generating overlapping quantum folding fields. When unauthorized vessels enter the net activates. Ships are folded into pocket dimensions, separate quantum spaces that exist alongside our universe but cannot interact with it. Horror spread through the chamber. "You're saying," Seraph Bell said slowly, "the Zatharan fleet still exists trapped in another dimension." In a manner of speaking, though exists may be too generous. The pocket dimensions have no conventional physics, no time as we understand it. Those inside are frozen in quantum stasis, neither alive nor dead. "That's obscene," someone whispered. "That's effective," Vasquez countered. "Our exclusion zone has one purpose: ensure that anyone violating our boundaries cannot threaten Earth, cannot return to reveal our defenses, and cannot encourage others to test us." Vresh spoke again, voice shaking. "You condemned my people to eternal torture." "They feel nothing," Vasquez said, though her expression softened. "Time doesn't pass for them. They aren't suffering because they aren't experiencing anything. It's closer to suspended animation than torture." "Can they be retrieved?" Astar asked. "Theoretically, yes. If the platforms were deactivated and fields collapsed, they'd return to normal space. However, doing so would leave Earth defenseless. We have no intention of deactivating our defenses. So they're lost forever." "They were lost the moment Commander Krathos gave the order to enter our territory. We gave fair warning. He gambled that we were bluffing. He was wrong. That is tragedy, certainly, but not murder." The council fell silent. Representatives looked at each other with a new understanding. Fear, respect, a fundamental recalculation of how they viewed humanity. Seraph Bell cleared his throat. "The council must deliberate. However, I have one question. You've revealed these weapons. Aren't you concerned others will develop countermeasures?" Vasquez smiled slightly, coldly. "Let them try. The physics require understanding of quantum mechanics and space-time manipulation we spent centuries developing. Even with today's disclosure, it would take most species hundreds of years to replicate our work. And by then, our defenses will have evolved." She let that sink in. "But more importantly, we hope no one will try. We hope today's revelation serves as permanent warning. Earth has boundaries. Those boundaries are absolute. Cross them, and you will simply cease to exist in any meaningful way." "And if the Council decides your actions constitute a war crime," Vresh demanded, "if we vote to sanction Earth, then we politely decline and withdraw from the Galactic Council," Vasquez said. "We joined hoping for peaceful coexistence. If the Council cannot provide that, we have no place here. We'll return to our system, seal our borders completely, and have no further contact with the galactic civilization." "You'd isolate yourselves completely?" Astar asked. "If necessary, yes. We survived 10,000 years alone on one planet. We can survive another 10,000 alone in one star system. It would be preferable to being constantly tested." She looked around the chamber one final time. "We came to the stars hoping to find friends. We found predators. So we learned to be something predators avoid. That's not the story we wanted to write, but it's the story you forced us to write." With that, she bowed to Seraph Bell and walked toward the exit. Before she reached the door, Seraph Bell spoke. "This council recognizes Earth's declared exclusion zone. All species are advised to respect its boundaries." Vasquez paused, turned, nodded once. Then she left. The vote came an hour later. Recognize Earth's exclusion zone 68-5. Condemn loss of life 73-0. Demand weapon dismantlement. Failed 31-42. Earth had won, but at what cost? 1 year later, the memorial dedication ceremony took place at the exclusion zone boundary. Two monuments stood side by side. One human, one Zatharan. The human monument listed 5 names: Captain Isadora Thorne and her crew. Below their names, an inscription: "They volunteered to be the last warning. They hoped you would listen." The Zatharan monument was larger, much larger. 451,688 names engraved on metal plates that would last millennia. Below the names, they followed orders. They believed in their cause. They ignored warnings and paid the ultimate price. Let their sacrifice teach us that pride and power are not substitutes for wisdom. Let their memory remind us that every action has consequences. Let their names stand as a warning. Listen when others establish boundaries. Respect when others say no. And understand that strength does not give the right to ignore the sovereignty of others. Ships from 30 species gathered for the dedication. No one entered the exclusion zone. They simply came to witness, to remember. A human delegation attended led by Earth defense officers, among them Lieutenant Kira Strand, one of Captain Thorne's former students. A Zitharan delegation came from the shattered remnants of the Empire. Acting Commander Vresh led them. He'd testified before the Council, had described Krathos's final choice to save who he could. The Empire had fractured within weeks of the fleet's loss. 47 systems declared independence. Some formed new alliances. Others descended into civil war. Vresh had tried to hold it together for 3 weeks before accepting reality. The Zitharan Empire was no more. At the memorial, Vresh placed Commander Krathos's command insignia at the base of the Zitharan monument. His hands shook as he did it. Lieutenant Strand stepped forward and saluted. They stood in silence for a moment. "Do you celebrate this?" Vresh asked quietly. "No," Strand said. "We mourn Captain Thorne. We respect Commander Krathos's final choice. This victory has no joy. My people see you as monsters. Perhaps we are, but we're alive, and we're free, and no one will threaten that again." Vresh looked at the human monument, at Captain Thorne's name. She had children, 2 daughters, 8 and 11 when she died. They're 14 and 17 now. And they know what their mother did. Yes, they know she volunteered, that she tried to save your people even though your commander destroyed her for it. They're proud of her. Vresh was quiet for a long time. Commander Krathos had a son, Davros, 25 years old. He was in one of the ships that he's in one of your quantum pockets, frozen, neither alive nor dead. "I know," Strand said. "I'm sorry." Are you just saying words?" Strand met his eyes. "I'm sorry that it came to this. That warnings weren't enough. That 450,000 people paid the price for one man's arrogance. But I'm not sorry we defended ourselves. I'm not sorry we survive." Vresh nodded slowly. "Honesty, I appreciate that." He looked out at the exclusion zone, at the invisible boundary where so many had died. "My people will remember this. The children I teach will learn about Commander Krathos, about his pride, about his failure, about the day the Zitharan Empire learned that the galaxy had changed. And ours will learn about Captain Thorne," Strand said, "about warnings, about the cost of deterrence, about the responsibility that comes with power." They stood together in silence as ships began departing. 50 light-years away in quantum pockets scattered throughout the zone, 450,000 Zitharans existed in frozen stasis. Commander Krathos among them. His last thought preserved forever: "I should have listened." 50 years later, an unknown species approached the exclusion zone boundary. Their ship was small, a scout vessel from a civilization that had just achieved FTL travel. Young, curious, eager to explore. The captain was Velix, a being of translucent membranes and bioluminescent organs. They had read about the Zitharan incident in historical databases, had dismissed it as exaggeration. Surely no species would create something so terrible. Surely the warnings were overblown. But as they approached, the boundary sensors detected the faint spatial distortions, the geometric patterns that shouldn't exist. And they saw the monuments. Velix read the inscriptions. Read the names, all 450,000 of them. Read the warning at the bottom of both monuments. This exclusion zone exists not because Earth seeks conflict, but because Earth seeks peace. We ask only that other species respect our boundaries as we respect theirs. The ships that entered this region did so against multiple warnings. Their fate was tragic but preventable. Below that, we hope that no other species will force us to demonstrate our defensive capabilities again. We prefer to be your partners, not your adversaries. The choice, as always, is yours. And at the very bottom, in large letters, visible even from a distance, cross this line and you will share the Zitharan fleet's fate. Velix stared at the monuments. at the empty space beyond where 300 ships had entered and never returned. They thought about their own ship, their crew, their families waiting at home. They thought about Commander Kratos, about his arrogance, about his failure, and they turned their ship around. In Earth's capital, in a quiet garden dedicated to peace, Elena Vasquez sat on a bench, 95 years old now, retired for decades, but still writing. Her memoirs would be published next month. The final chapter was titled The Price of Peace. She had written, "History will debate whether Earth's actions were justified. Some will say we went too far, others will say we didn't go far enough. I believe both views are wrong. We did exactly what we said we would do. We established a boundary, warned those who would cross it, and enforced that boundary when our warnings were ignored. That is not cruelty, that is consistency. And in a galaxy where might often makes right, sometimes consistency is the most powerful weapon of all." Commander Kratos paid the ultimate price to learn this lesson. 450,000 of his people paid it with him. I pray that their sacrifice means no other species will have to learn it the same way. Because the exclusion zone remains. The platforms remain. The warning remains. And if anyone tests us again, well, we told you what would happen. Don't say you weren't warned. She closed the manuscript, looked up at the stars. 50 years. No species had entered the exclusion zone in 50 years. The lesson had been learned. But Elena knew something others didn't. Something she would take to her grave. The exclusion net was only the beginning. 300 offensive platforms hung in deep space, invisible waiting. A final insurance policy. Mutual assured destruction on a galactic scale. She had authorized their deployment 80 years ago when she was just a junior diplomat, had watched them launch in secret, had helped maintain the lie ever since. If Earth fell, the platforms would activate, would target the aggressor's home systems, would fold entire worlds into quantum pockets. The galaxy would learn that destroying Earth meant destroying themselves. It was monstrous. It was necessary. It was the only way a small species could survive in a galaxy of predators. Elena stood. Her joints ached with age. Soon she would join Captain Thorne and all the others who'd made impossible choices. But for now, she was still here, still watching, still ensuring the lesson was remembered. She walked slowly back to her home, leaning on a cane. Above her, the stars shone down, silent, eternal. And somewhere in the exclusion zone, the platforms waited. Patient, absolute, ready. Classified log. Earth Defense Command access level, Omega 50 years after the incident. The exclusion net has functioned flawlessly for 5 decades. 0 intrusions, 0 tests. The Zatharan lesson has held. But we continue to improve. Phase 2 platforms are now online. These can move, can relocate, can establish new exclusion zones around our colonies. Phase 3 is in development. These will have offensive capability. We'll be able to project quantum folding fields across light years. And the 300 strike platforms remain in position. Undetected, maintained by automated systems, ready to activate if Earth faces existential threat. We told the galaxy we wanted to be left alone. They have left us alone, and we pray it stays that way. Because if it doesn't, if someone tests us again, if someone threatens Earth, then they will learn that the exclusion net was just the warning. And warnings are the kindest thing we know how to give. In quantum pockets scattered throughout the exclusion zone, 450,000 Zatharans exist in frozen stasis. Commander Kratos among them. His last thought preserved forever, I should have listened. Time does not pass for them. They do not age, do not dream, do not suffer. They simply are. Frozen in the moment they learn too late that when humans draw a line, that line is absolute. The platforms will maintain the fields for 10,000 years. 10,000 years of preservation. 10,000 years of warning. 10,000 years of proof that Earth's boundaries are real. And in those 10,000 years, perhaps the galaxy will learn. Perhaps species will evolve past the need for such demonstrations. Perhaps someday, the platforms can be deactivated. The fields can be collapsed. The Zatharans can be released. Perhaps. But until that day comes, the line remains. The warning stands, and humanity waits. Patient, vigilant, absolute. Don't cross the line. We told you what would happen.